A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight, where we get you the day's top stories from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilshi and here are the headlines. Reshuffle of the Union Cabinet to take place on Sunday. Ahead of the third such exercise for the Modi government, Union Ministers Mahendranath Pandey and Rajiv Pratap Rudy confirmed that they have resigned. Deepak Verma assumes charge as the new Secretary General of Rajya Sabha, says he will work towards making the upper house an active, vibrant organization. NITI Ayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar is confident that the July-September quarter will see a 7 to 7.5% growth. Attributes dip in the first quarter GDP to destocking ahead of GST and deflationary impact of the wholesale price index. "24 hours after the building collapse in Mumbai's Bhindi Bazaar, authorities call off the rescue operations. 33 people are killed after the 117-year-old structure came down 2 days after massive rains in Mumbai. And the Kenyan Supreme Court cites election irregularities and invalidates last month's presidential election result. Opposition calls for prosecution of electoral committee that declared Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner with 54% of the votes. Top story this evening. Ahead of the expected cabinet reshuffle on Sunday, Minister of State for HRD Mahendranath Pandey and Skill Development Minister Rajiv Pratap Rudy have both resigned. Confirming their resignations, they've said that it was a party decision.
देखिए, अब पार्टी के हम लोग कार्यकर्ता हैं और पार्टी का निर्णय हुआ कि आप अपना इस्तीफा दें, इसलिए वो बिल्कुल सामान्य है और पार्टी में काम करने का पुराना अनुभव है और मैं समझता हूं कि जिस स्थान पर भी जो भी कोई काम करता है वो हम सिपाही के रूप में पार्टी का काम करते हैं। सामान्य रूप से सरकार में काम करने का मौका मिला, आगे भी पार्टी में काम करने का मौका मिले, बस इसी अभियान के साथ चलते हैं।
संगठन योजना करता है और हम लोग संगठन के सिपाही हैं। संगठन का काम करते करते इस दायित्व पर आया था। संगठन का काम करते हुए मुझे उत्तर प्रदेश की भाजपा अध्यक्ष का दायित्व दिया गया है। मैंने खुद अनुरोध किया नेतृत्व से कि बड़े राज्य में मुझे ज्यादा समय देना है, इसलिए मुझे इस दायित्व से मुक्त किया जाए।
We'll keep you updated on developments on that front. Meanwhile, Deepak Verma, a retired IS officer of the 1978 batch, has assumed charge as the new Secretary General of Rajya Sabha. Mr. Verma held the charge of Secretary of Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs before retirement in 2013 and then served as the chairman of the UP Electricity Regulatory Commission. Our correspondent Vishal Daya spoke to him.
Mr. Deepak Verma has joined as the new Secretary General of Rajya Sabha. We have with us the new Secretary General himself. Sir, congratulations, and this doesn't look like a new domain for you. You've already been Secretary for the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs before you retired. So any priorities with this new office you would want?
Thank you for your good wishes and congratulating me. Yes, I have been Secretary Parliamentary Affairs, but I think every new assignment is a new challenge. So what I wish to do is, during my tenure as Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha, as you know that Parliament is the soul of democracy. So we want the Rajya Sabha to become even more active, vibrant organization in which the aspirations of people are truly reflected and the debates take place in a very cordial and friendly atmosphere.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
In other news, after assuming office on Friday, NITI Ayog's Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar said that it was absolutely wrong to say that demonetization was responsible for the slide in GDP. Kumar stressed that farmer stress is a real phenomenon and that job creation, agriculture and health are key priorities to make development a mass movement in India.
Exuding confidence that the July-September quarter will see 7 to 7.5% growth, new Vice Chairman of the NITI Ayog, Rajiv Kumar, defended the demonetization exercise. Kumar attributed the dip in the GDP to the active destocking in anticipation of GST and the deflationary impact of the wholesale price index.
तो सिर्फ 6 हफ्ते के लिए हुआ था और उसमें भी करेंसी थी मौजूद थी और जनवरी से तो वो शुरू हो ही चुका था और इसलिए ये कहना कि डिमोनेटाइजेशन की वजह से अप्रैल से लेके जून तक की क्वार्टर में उस तिमाही में जो है वो जीडीपी की गिरावट जो है वो उसकी वजह से है, वो मेरे ख्याल में बिल्कुल ही गलत है।
The new vice chairman also defended the NITI Ayog's recommendation of strategic disinvestment in 12 central public sector enterprises.
कई बार ये जो एलिगेशन लगता है ना कि फैमिली सिल्वर बेच दी तो जब सिल्वर जो है वो कांसा बन जाए तो कुछ के बारे में सोचना पड़ता है, तो यूँ ही कहा जाए तो ज़्यादा बेहतर है।
Kumar assured that NITI Ayog will generate out-of-the-box transformational ideas to make India an economically advanced nation. It will also seek to create a platform where all stakeholders can work together towards India's development. He also said that competitive, cooperative federalism will be realized by NITI Ayog, working in close association with the states. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, a key macroeconomic data pointed out on Friday that the overall health of India's manufacturing sector has improved. India's economic growth unexpectedly had slowed to 5.7% in the June quarter as manufacturing bottomed out. Experts, however, saw it as a transitory slowdown and feel that growth may pick up from its current level in the coming quarters. Here's a report. The Nikkei India Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, a composite indicator of manufacturing performance, stood at 51.2 in August, up from 47.9 reported in July. This signaled a renewed improvement in the health of the manufacturing sector. The overall health of India's manufacturing sector improved in August due to resumed growth of new orders, production and employment. India's economic growth had plummeted to a 13-quarter low of 5.7% in the April-June quarter this fiscal, as the manufacturing sector received a debilitating blow from the pre-goods and services tax destocking by jittery businesses. Experts feel the lower-than-expected economic growth in the first quarter this year was a temporary blip.
That what is happening now is not a secular slowdown or secular decline of economic activity. What we are having is a temporary blip around the otherwise rising trend, which means that now that the GST is kind of settled, not entirely, but one quarter is over and GST is more than one quarter is over. So GST is settling down. The uncertainties about GST have waned, and with that, natural momentum would be restored.
Meanwhile, Indian shares rose on Friday despite tepid growth after the much weaker than expected economic data raised hopes that the central bank would cut interest rates at its next policy meeting in October. The 30-share BSE Sensex was up 161.74 points at 31,892, and the 50-share NSE Nifty gained 56.50 points at 9,974. By 2020, India is expected to become the fifth largest manufacturing destination. Manufacturing is touted to hold potential to account for 25 to 30% of the country's GDP, while creating up to 90 million jobs by 2025. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV. In other news, 24 hours after a building collapse in Bhendi Bazaar in Mumbai, rescue operations were called off today. 33 people were killed after a 117-year-old building in South Mumbai crashed on Thursday, 2 days after massive rains in Mumbai. Rescue operations were called off as it was believed that no more persons were trapped under the debris. However, fire brigade personnel have been deployed at the site as a precautionary measure. The dilapidated Hussaini building, which housed a total of 13 tenants and one commercial godown, was declared unsafe by the Maharashtra Housing and Area Development Authority in 2011. While 7 families moved out of the building complex few years ago, the remaining families continue to stay on. The state government had announced a solatium of 5 lakh rupees each for the next of kin of the deceased. The Supreme Court has agreed to begin the final hearing in the Bofors payoff case in the last week of October. The apex court has said that it will hear the appeal filed by BJP leader Ajay Kumar Agarwal challenging a 2005 order by the Delhi High Court quashing the charges against the Hinduja brothers. A bench comprising Chief Justice Deepak Mishra and Justices A.M. Khanwilkar and D.Y. Chandrachud said that the hearing will begin in the week commencing from the 30th of October. The order came on an interim application filed by Agarwal seeking early hearing and adjudication of his appeal filed against the Delhi High Court order in the 64 crore rupees scam. The Supreme Court had admitted Agarwal's petition on the 18th of October 2005, which was filed after the CBI failed to approach the top court with an appeal within the 90-day deadline following the High Court verdict.
मैंने एप्लीकेशन फाइल करी थी डिटेल, उस एप्लीकेशन मैंने ये मेंशन भी किया था कि इस प्रकार का जो मैटर 12 साल से पेंडिंग है, जो कि डिसाइड नहीं हुआ है, इसकी वजह से अगस्ता वेस्टलैंड जैसे केस लगातार रिपीट हो रहे हैं, करप्शन डिफेंस डील्स में हो रहा है, जो कि कंट्री की सुरक्षा से संबंधित मामला है और इसको जल्दी जल्दी सुना जाना चाहिए। पहले लगातार 2010 में ये मैटर राइप था, केसेस सुनने के लिए आया था और उस वक्त ट्रायल कोर्ट रिकॉर्ड को सुप्रीम कोर्ट से सीबीआई ने भिजवा दिया वापस।
The BJP in Karnataka on Friday sought disqualification of 8 MLCs, including 6 from the Congress and 2 JDS, for providing fake documents to vote in the mayoral election. These MLCs face allegations of submitting false addresses to enroll themselves as voters in Bengaluru for the Bruhat Bengaluru Mahanagarpalike polls. A party delegation led by the leader of the opposition in the Legislative Assembly, Jagdish Shettar, submitted a memorandum to the governor urging him to issue a directive for the disqualification. A report submitted by the BBMP to the Chief Electoral Officer of Karnataka also accused the MLCs of giving fake bills to the Karnataka Legislative Council to claim lakhs of rupees as travel allowance.
Congress, with malevolent intention, they enrolled the names of these 8 MLCs in the enrollment of the voter list of the mayor election and giving false information. After that, after voting that, after election, getting election of the mayor, then they have given the address of the their original residence, Bagalkoti, Ballari and other things, that claiming TAD for committee meetings and other things, travelling allowances, that it clearly goes to say that they have committed a offence, criminal offence under IPC and Criminal Procedure Code. Even they violated the provisions of the Public Representatives Act also.
After relative calm for about a fortnight, protests erupted in Darjeeling and Kalimpong hills in North Bengal since Thursday night, following an announcement to call off the nearly 80-day strike in the hills. The supporters of the Gorkha Janmukti Morcha and residents of Darjeeling took to the streets on Thursday night. Many of them were seen marching on roads or organizing demonstrations in the town. GJM Assistant General Secretary Binoy Tamang, who was recently appointed as the coordinator of the GJM, was removed from the post of coordinator. GJM Chief Bimal Gurung took the decision of removing Binoy Tamang from his post and also revoked his decision to suspend the shutdown till the 12th of September. Gurung slammed Binoy Tamang as a traitor who was playing into the hands of the state government. Tamang's house, meanwhile, was ransacked by pro-Gorkhaland supporters. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj on Friday called on Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena and discussed bilateral issues of mutual collaboration. Swaraj, who is in Colombo to attend the second Indian Ocean Conference, met Sirisena on the sidelines of the two-day meeting. Earlier today, Swaraj met her Sri Lankan counterpart Tilak Marapana and discussed bilateral cooperation and partnership for progress and prosperity. On Thursday, Swaraj also met Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and her Singaporean counterpart Vivian Balakrishnan. The Indian Ocean Conference has been jointly organized by India, Singapore and Colombo. As a goodwill gesture, Sri Lanka yesterday released 76 Indian fishermen. With that, a look at what else made news across the country today in Nationwide. The Supreme Court said that it would hear Congress leader Jairam Ramesh's plea challenging the Lok Sabha Speaker's decision to certify a bill to amend the Aadhaar law as a money bill in the first week of November. The matter was mentioned before a bench headed by Chief Justice Deepak Mishra by Kapil Sibal, who represented Ramesh and sought an early hearing on the plea, a request that was not granted by the court. The CBI has told Supreme Court that there is compelling reason for the lookout circulars against former Union Minister P. Chidambaram's son Karti Chidambaram in a graft case. Additional Solicitor General Tushar Mehta told the bench headed by Chief Justice Deepak Mishra that it is not a simple case of one company but one involving jugglery of accounts and properties abroad. The bench has asked the CBI to respond to the affidavit filed by Karti in connection with his questioning by investigators on the 23rd and the 28th of August. The Haryana police has issued a lookout notice for Hanipreet Singh, adopted daughter of rape convict Dera Sacha Sauda chief Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh. A similar notice has also been issued against key Dera functionary Aditya Insan, who has already been charged with sedition for inciting violence after Gurmeet Singh's conviction. Police said that they were looking into allegations of a conspiracy to free the Dera chief. The police officials have said that airports, bus stands and railway stations across the country have been alerted. With that, a quick break here. Up next, we'll get you the top international stories.
We have to think of manned space program. Why we need manned space program is there's a very interesting study which has been done that moon has got plenty of helium-3 raw material. BrahMos is concerned, once we establish supersonic, we also wanted to take lead further. So we launched a hypersonic program. We have now got very good number of people working on hypersonic program. ISRO is also working on hypersonic program. It is now it's time to really take off hypersonic, which is going to be the future as far as the cruise missile is concerned.
What Eureka with Dr. A. Shivathanu Pillai, Honorary Distinguished Professor, ISRO, only on Rajya Sabha television.
The story we thought we knew. The story of magnificence. The story of bloody battles. Of those who ruled and those who left their footprints. The story charting the course of our past. Talking history on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. Let's get to international news. And Joseph Yuvraj Pillai, of Indian origin, has been appointed as the acting president of Singapore. An 83-year-old veteran civil servant, Pillai will act as the president till a new head of state is sworn in later this month. Pillai, who is the chairman of the Council of Presidential Advisors, has served as acting president every time the president goes on an overseas trip and has served 60 such stints. And now news from Kenya, where the Supreme Court nullified the result of last month's presidential election won by President Uhuru Kenyatta. The court observed that the August 8th poll was not conducted in accordance with the constitution and ordered a new one within 60 days.
For the first time in Kenya, its Supreme Court cancelled the result of the presidential election and ordered a re-poll. In a ruling issued on Friday, the court said the Electoral Board committed irregularities during last month's vote, harming the integrity of the election.
A declaration is hereby issued that the presidential election held on 8 August 2017 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared results invalid, null, and void. Number 2, a declaration is hereby issued that the third respondent was not validly declared as the president-elect, and that the declaration is invalid, null, and void.
4 of the 6 judges upheld a petition filed by opposition candidate Raila Odinga and ordered fresh elections within 60 days.
An order is hereby issued directing the first respondent to organize and conduct a fresh presidential election in strict conformity with the Constitution and the applicable election laws within 60 days of the determination under Article 143 of the Constitution.
Opposition candidate Raila Odinga was jubilant as he welcomed the ruling.
Indeed, it's a very historic day for the people of Kenya and by extension for the people of the continent of Africa. For the first time in history of African democratization, a ruling has been made by a court nullifying irregular elections of a president. This is a precedent-setting ruling. They are very historical.
Odinga also called for prosecution of the Electoral Committee that declared Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner with 54% of the vote.
We have no faith at all in the Electoral Commission as currently constituted. They have committed criminal acts. Most of them actually belong to jail. And therefore we are going to ask for prosecution of all the Electoral Commission officers who have caused this monstrous crime against the people of Kenya.
The election results sparked sporadic protests in Kenya in which at least 28 people were killed, raising fears of a major political violence similar to what was witnessed in 2007 when over 1,200 people lost their lives. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now to the U.S. and rescue efforts intensified in flood-ravaged Texas almost a week after Hurricane Harvey struck parts of the southeast state on Friday. Even as the flood waters started to recede, many residents still remain stranded without food and water. Authorities also launched search operations for survivors and made helicopter rescues from rooftops as the death toll climbed to 47. The White House announced that U.S. President Donald Trump will donate $1 million of his personal money for the flood relief. The White House estimated that 1 lakh houses in Texas and Louisiana were damaged and more than 30,000 people are taking refuge in the shelters. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence also visited Texas and promised full support until the state is back on its feet.
The resilience of the people of Texas has been inspiring. To see people who have gone through the horror of one of the largest natural disasters in American history, to be standing shoulder to shoulder, passing out food to their neighbors, helping their neighbors clear out their homes with a smile on their faces. It's humbling to me, and it's deeply inspiring.
Meanwhile, the U.S. has ordered Russia to close diplomatic offices in San Francisco, New York and Washington within the next 2 days. This is the latest round of punitive measures between the two countries that began at the end of last year. Russia has been ordered to close its San Francisco consulate and 2 trade missions in New York and Washington. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov expressed regret during a phone call with his U.S. counterpart Rex Tillerson about Washington's decision. The U.S. State Department's move follows Moscow's reduction of U.S. diplomatic staff in Russia last month. That in turn followed new U.S. sanctions on Russia over Crimea and alleged election interference, which led to the expulsion of 35 Russian diplomats.
Right now, we're requiring the Russian government to close its consulate general in San Francisco, a trade annex in Washington, D.C., and a trade annex in New York City. These closures have to be completed by the September 2nd. We've taken a firm and measured action in response to Russia's unfortunate decision earlier this year. We want to halt the downward spiral, and we want to move forward towards better relations.
And here are more updates from across the world in Global Buzz. The head of the U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria feels that Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is still alive. Army Lieutenant General Stephen Townsend said that coalition forces were actively searching for al-Baghdadi, adding that if found, he will likely be killed and not captured. Life returned to normal in Karachi today as at least 13 people were killed by flooding following heavy monsoon rains. The private Eidi Foundation, which runs ambulances and medical centers, said that 350 to 400 houses in low-lying areas were inundated near the Liari River. British Prime Minister Theresa May met Japanese Emperor Akihito at the Imperial Palace today on the last day of a 3-day visit to Japan. May, on her first official visit to Japan as Prime Minister, held bilateral talks with her counterpart Shinzo Abe and agreed to cooperate in countering the threat posed by North Korea. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has said that the U.S. intends to work with Pakistan to take down terrorists, asserting that this is what a responsible nation does. His remarks came after the State Department notified to the Congress to place a pause button on $255 million foreign military financing for Pakistan. That's all we have for you in the news tonight. Thank you for joining us.